Hi, welcome to the Isolate live stream on our Twitter at isolate_show. Here I've got with us Dr. Ralph Derbyshire, subject leader of fine art in the University of Northampton. Ralph, thanks for joining us today.
Not at all.
Could you just describe to us your practice?
Well, I'm a sculptor. I make three-dimensional objects, installations, very involved in transgressive imagery, trying to define the nature of visual studies and engagement with audiences. Really, that's probably the key. It's quite political work with a small p. It's impassioned, very unfashionable. It's very much about making. I like getting my hands dirty and solving problems three-dimensionally. Really, yeah. Probably left loads out, but you know.
That's fine. As a subject leader of fine art in the University of Northampton, how do you engage with the students and their works?
Pedagogically, I'm very much against a sort of transmission way of teaching whereby a member of staff just tells you how they would solve the problem themselves. It's much more about conversation. It's about taking the conversation to places that the member of staff has never been, the sort of experiences that they've never had, so that learning can be taken from the ground up, and the student actually has a dialogue and a discourse with the member of staff which is on a completely equal footing, remembering that within an art college, and we are an art college within a large university, that we are practitioners first and foremost. We're also teachers, but we're all practicing artists, the whole team. So the conversation is absolutely vital. The dialogue between the two as individual artists and makers is vital. So how I approach it is one of complete enjoyment, formally and informal. You'll obviously often see me just having sneaky wanders around the studios and picking up sketchbooks and flicking through things, quite often late at night, which is my preferred modus operandi, apart from formal tutorials. So it's one of, hopefully, equal respect. I've just been doing it longer than you.
Brilliant. As we all know, in Walgrave Building there are a variety of courses leading from BA to MA to PhD. Myself, currently on the MA course, we get to see a variety of artists working in their own preferred styles. But coming from yourself, how would you describe the MA course for someone who is on a BA thinking about doing an MA?
Well, the MA is really, it's an extension of a different way of thinking. So an MA, for instance, I'll just give you a really good example. It's one that's really stuck in my mind recently. I recently did an electronic interview while I was in China with a Chinese student who'd been learning footwear. And I thought, well, this individual wants to come onto the MA. I'm not quite sure how this is going to work. And they showed me their work. And the progress of their footwear had got to the point where the shoes they were designing were no longer wearable. The latest work they'd shown me were actually sculptural. They could, you could put them on a foot, but you could never walk anywhere. And what had actually happened was those shoes had become a manifestation of the way of thinking of that individual, and I found that absolutely fascinating. That person's going to come onto the MA, and they're going to bring something of their thinking and their prior learning onto the MA. So the MA is a I'm going to use loads of cliches now. It's forgive me. It's a melting pot. It's a place, and it's not just about knowledge transfer. It's about taking on board things that we've always been told to be true and saying, I don't believe that anymore. That's not the case. Let's turn it upside down. So, for instance, this footwear designer, or we've got somebody coming onto the MA in fine art who's done product design, who's equally interested in thinking, another cliche, outside of the box, both theoretically and through the materiality of the ways that they're working. They're going to come onto the course. They're going to be mixing with people like yourself. And when they go back, if they go back into product design, can you imagine the products they're going to be producing? Yeah. I mean, talk about innovation and taking it completely outside of its original starting point. So that's, to me, that's a really exciting point about MAs. It's not about necessarily continuing where you left off as an undergraduate. It's about expanding it and quite often taking it to its most illogical route. Mostly we're told to take things to their logical conclusion. An MA is quite often about taking it down the blind alley and finding out how you got down that blind alley, and once you get down to the end of there, you think, well, actually, this is the place I always needed to be anyway.
Yeah. Brilliant. very exciting stuff to hear that other people from other courses are joining our course, and
Yeah.
especially from international, whereas myself, I've come from
Yeah,
Gibraltar.
really exciting.
It's very exciting to see a cultural blend
Yeah,
within the building.
it's proper internationalisation.
Fantastic stuff. Okay, we'll go on to the show now. As an MA student, we're told that we have to exhibit, and thank God we are given such a great location to exhibit on campus in Avenue Gallery. From an MA point of view, what would your expectations be of an MA show? What characterises an MA show rather than a BA show?
Well, remember, it's an interim show, isn't it? It's not your final show. So I would still, to go back to I would still want to see a great deal of experimentation. I would be wanting you to put on work that you're saying, well, this is where I've arrived at the moment. This is the level of my thinking. This is the level of my confusion, perhaps. And this isn't by any means completed. This is me saying, I've arrived at this point. It's an ongoing journey. To be quite frank, most exhibitions are that, but we get all tied up in curatorship and money and things like that. But all exhibitions should be where the artist goes, this is how I've arrived, this is what I've arrived at the moment. Obviously your final show that will happen in the summer will be more conclusive in a sense, but it will still be ongoing work. I would want to see in your interim show some of the things that you consider to be mistakes, and where it differs from undergraduate to postgraduate, I think is in the level of the criticality and the inquiry. I think obviously criticality has a whole set of nuances around it and specific considerations, but it's about how have I considered every single aspect, and there is a caveat to that. Sometimes you can theorise and think your way out of making things. So the MA show is really about a flavour of the journey you're on at the moment, to use another cliche. Apology for all the cliches.
That's fine. That's totally fine. I don't think the people at home would have a problem with that. Okay, the title of the MA show that we're producing at the moment is called Isolate. Now, the definition online for isolate is to cause a person or place to remain alone or apart from others, or to place a person or animal in quarantine as a precaution. How do you think the title reflects on the works that will be shown at Isolate?
Well, I think it will reflect, in as much as art can be quite an isolating activity, and I think that's probably quite a good thing. But I think in terms of the work that I've seen being produced in the studios, it's very thoughtful, and so there is a sort of isolation of consideration and isolation of contemplation that I think is, as I say, it's absolutely necessary, and it's almost something one would need to manufacture. But there's a bigger idea behind isolation, and we might get onto this, so I don't want to steal your thunder, but the word isolation, there's a huge amount of people who are trained and untrained, people who've gone to art college, people who've never gone to art college, people who've gone to art college and become completely disenfranchised for whatever reason. It could be because of the gallery system, it could be because of the interference of money, the idea of becoming product, and have become isolated or isolated themselves. There is a huge amount of work going on across the country every evening. As soon as somebody clears a table and got the kids to bed, they don't just make the Eiffel Tower out of matchsticks, they make really, really, really important work. And it comes out of that level of isolation. So I think the word isolation within the context of what you guys are doing and what I do as an artist is a kind of, it's a negative and it's positive. It's a much maligned word, but it's something that we need to bear in mind when we're thinking about what it is that we're about. Who is it we're making for? I know we often talk about audience, but isolation is not a simple word. It's like anything when it comes to our subject area. It has a whole bunch of weighty meanings to it.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how you've reflected upon the word, because to other viewers of the poster, everyone can take isolate how they feel.
Yeah.
I think you've described it fantastically. As an active practitioner yourself, how vital would you say is it for an artist to exhibit their work?
Well, I mean, it's very important, but the idea of exhibition is a multicoloured activity. You know, it can be in various sort of art palaces, or it can be actually bringing people into your studio, or it can be talking about the work. It's vital. I mean, the notion that we should just be talking to other artists is an anathema to me. So putting work in areas that just people who either make it or sort of use art as a sort of an entertainment, not to describe it, is one way of doing it. But actually getting as larger audience as possible. The notion of I wrote something years ago about no rules of engagement. I really believe that we do whatever we can do in order to bring as large a proportion of the population in to look at our ideas, because actually our job is to say, no, that's not the way things are. It's like this. And that could be in a very poetic way, it could be in a political way, or it could be in a very populist way. But the point is we need to engage. So without exhibiting, we're not really having that level of engagement that I think is vital for the activity of making art.
Yeah, and since I've been here for 4 years, we've always been taught that to exhibit your work at any stage is very vital to your practice. So it's not just for the artist; it's also for the work to develop in different spaces. For example, a sculpture might look different within someone's studio rather than in the white walls of a gallery,
Very good point.
or even outside to react to the environmental issues.
Yeah, great point. Yeah,
brilliant.
You've been listening.
Yes. In this year's MA show, we're going to see a very wide variety of different medias. We're going to be seeing painting, seeing drawing, sculpture, video, and print. How do you think all of this will come together as a collective under one roof?
It can't not really, because as soon as you engage in a fine art practice, you are beholden to the material dictating to you what your activity takes on board, because the starting point is always the idea. So if you see yourself as working within a particular medium, you need to reconsider, because the medium makes itself apparent when it becomes the most appropriate way to describe or explore those ideas. And so that is why we'll find people working in mediums that don't actually enjoy working in, really, because it's the most appropriate way to describe that idea. So the idea of all those approaches coming together is absolutely the way it should be.
Yep. As some of you at home will have seen, our social media campaign has now been running for over a month, and we have reached over 100 people through our Twitter pages, Instagram and Facebook. We've also produced a trailer for the show to give out an insight into our practice. Now, again, how important do you think marketing is for the arts nowadays? Some people might describe that business is the most important factor of art nowadays, whereas others might think that creativity is...
Well, if you haven't got anything to make, there's nothing to market. And marketing is just another leg of exhibiting, isn't it, really? But I think the way it's marketed and the rise of social media is to me, it's a great democratic tool. So the more able we are to do that, the better. I'm not very good at it because I'm really ancient.
This is why we're here today.
Yeah, no, I think marketing is absolutely essential and vital. But we can't be just talking to ourselves all the time as artists or creators or designers. We've got to be talking to people that aren't necessarily involved in the arts. And drawing them in.
I think this is why our social media campaign has been very successful so far. We've had local newspapers interested in the show.
Yeah.
We've had local galleries such as NM Contemporary. We've even had people, people throughout the SU, the Northampton Students' Union, have also been very interested in the show. Okay, in the show we're going to be having catalogues, and in a normal catalogue you'd have the artist's work and a description from the artist.
Oh, this is where it gets difficult, isn't it?
This is where it gets interesting. For our sake, we've each chosen a synonym.
Yeah.
And each artist has made a reflection on each word. For example, mine was disconnect. So disconnect is a synonym of isolate. We'd like to give you a synonym today and see how you reflect on it. The word we've decided to give you is exclude.
Exclude.
So how do you think exclude would associate to your practice?
To my practice, well, I think my practice is based around not excluding people. My own. Are you talking about what I do in my studio?
Your own practice. So how would you react to the word and associate it to
exclude?
Yeah.
Well, my work is trying to reach those people that are excluded. They're excluded from the art world. You know, the people who don't think that they necessarily have the wherewithal or the understanding or the education to understand art. When in actual fact they do. There's just they've been excluded from a world of theoretical notions that are supporting the act of creation. So what I do in my studio is about what I just mentioned earlier. It's about not having any rules of engagement, bringing people who have excluded themselves or have been excluded into the world of trying to engage with the didactic nature of the visual arts, and for me to do that very simple but complex thing, which is look at the world and say, actually, I think it's like this. What do you think? Don't be excluded. Come and give me your notion about this.
So your work depends on a very heavy dialogue between viewer and work.
Yeah, I make work that is extremely, how would you describe it? It's extremely engaging and attractive, so that the viewer comes closer to it and is willing to spend more time with it, so that the underlying ideas and notions behind the work have a better chance of entering the consciousness of the individual in a hopefully very democratic way, so they are not excluded, which there is huge amounts of exclusion within the United Kingdom at the moment.
Brilliant. Okay, for this section we're just gonna take a step back and we're just gonna play a little. I'm gonna come up with a word.
Yeah.
And I want you straight away, without even thinking about it, just come up with a response.
This could be so dangerous live, couldn't it?
Very dangerous. So remember, no swearing, no.
Oh, that's going to be hard.
All right. So we've only got a couple of words here that we've been given by other MA students. So painting.
Mess.
Printing.
Unfathomable difficulty. I don't do it.
Studio.
Haven.
Sketchbook.
Haven.
Video.
Telly.
New media.
Stefan.
Gallery.
Big.
Walgrave.
Home.
Northampton.
No sea.
Art.
It's where it is.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot for that. Thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah, just a reminder, Isolate's private view will be on the 12th of May in Avenue Gallery and Avenue Campus, Northampton. We start at 6 o'clock, so please come down and enjoy the show. Thanks a lot to Dr. Ralph Derbyshire for attending this live interview. And our next one will be with Dr. Craig Staff next week. We'll be posting some tweets up informing you about that. But thanks again for your help.
Casey. It's been jolly enjoyable.
Yes, it has been, yeah?
Good.
Okay.